I had the word ready. No. Simple, clean, final. The kind a man says once and doesn't go back on. I'd been holding it since the morning he rode in 3 months back July. Dust on everything. Holes in his boots you could see daylight through. He came asking for work, not for my daughter. Not yet. I had the no ready for both. My name is Thomas Holly. I have run the Holly place for 30 years. 200 acres of Wyoming. Grass and creek bottom at the foot of the Bighorn Range. Cattle and horses, and the particular silence of land that you have worked long enough to know the way you know a person. I built it from 2 rooms and a promise, and Agnes and I built it together for 25 of those years. And then in the winter of 1878, I finished building it. Alone. Agnes, I will not spend long on. Agnes, because there is no way to spend the right amount of time on a person like that in the middle of another story. She was the kind of woman who made sense of things, not by explaining them, by standing near them, the way a lamp makes a room sensible, not by describing the room, but by lighting it. When she went, a lot of things stopped making sense, and I had spent 5 years learning to manage without the lamp. What I will say is this: Agnes had a gift for seeing people, not for being charitable toward them. She was clear-eyed and had no patience for nonsense, but for seeing what was actually there rather than what she expected to find. She had seen something in me at 26 that I would not have seen in myself. I had been trying ever since to be the thing she saw. That is what a good marriage does to a man. It gives him a standard he spends his life working toward, and he is better for the working, even on the days he falls short. I had not found that standard applicable to the question of my daughter's suitors. I had been applying a different standard, the standard of what I could protect her from, rather than what I could give her toward. Agnes would have seen the difference immediately. I had taken 5 years to begin to see it. I had 1 child, Ellie, 23 that October, with her mother's gray eyes and her mother's way of doing what needed doing without telling anyone she was doing it. She had been running the house and she was 17, the cooking, the washing, the accounts. The kitchen garden Agnes had started, and that Ellie had kept going season after season, quietly, without instruction. She did it well. She did everything well. She was 23 years old, and she had been taking care of this house and this man for 6 years. And I had been watching men come and go around her for 4 of those 6 years and finding reasons. I had good reasons, or I told myself they were good. A father's reasons always feel solid from the inside. You have to stand back from them and look at the shape before you see the holes. The men before Cal, one was pleasant and lazy, which is a combination that destroys things slowly. One drank, which destroys things faster. One had a wife already in Cheyenne, which destroyed everything at once when we found out. The reasons for those 3 had been genuine. I had protected Ellie from real things. That felt like a record that proved something. The town had opinions about my record. Clearwater had opinions about everything. It was a small town and getting smaller as the railroad pushed west and took the younger people with it. And towns that are shrinking have a great deal of energy available for other people's business. Mrs. Aldrich at the dry goods store had mentioned more than once that Ellie was a fine young woman who deserved a settled life. Judge Patterson had made some comment about a man he knew in Sheridan with property and prospects. The pastor had included in a sermon once something about the error of withholding good things out of an excess of caution, which I believe was directed at me specifically, and which I chose to hear as a general theological observation. I was not going to be hurried by Mrs. Aldrich or Judge Patterson or a sermon. I had built this land on 30 years of my own judgment, and I was not going to hand my daughter to the first acceptable man who came through the gate because the town had decided I was taking too long. I was using that pride to justify the no I had ready for Cal Briggs, and I did not examine that logic closely until October made me. He had come in July looking for fence work. 24, from Kansas, had been working ranches since he was 17. He was lean in the way that comes from years of real work and not quite enough to eat along the way. He had dark brown hair and brown eyes that looked at you directly, which some men do as performance and some do because they haven't learned not to yet, and some do because it is simply their nature. I watched him the first week to figure out which kind he was. He worked the south fence line that first week. I rode the perimeter on Friday to check the work, which I did with every man I hired, and which they knew I did, and which still told me things because a man who works differently on Thursday than he does on Friday with an inspection coming is a man whose quality is external. Cal's south fence on Friday was identical to what I had watched him do on Tuesday when I rode past without stopping. Same depth on the posts, same tension on the wire, same attention to the low section near the creek where the cattle had pushed through twice. He was not performing for me. He was just working. I noted this and kept the no ready, because noting a man's work ethic and approving of his interest in your daughter are different accounting columns, and I had kept them separate my whole life. In August, I added a second man to the fence rotation and watched how Cal worked beside someone else. Some men inflate when they have an audience. Some deflate because they are used to being the best in a smaller room. Cal worked the same. He talked when the other man talked and was quiet when the other man was quiet. And when the other man made a mistake on a gate hinge, Cal pointed it out in a manner that was a fact rather than a correction, which is a distinction that matters and that most 24-year-old men have not yet made. I also watched him with the horses. I had 3 horses besides Pen, a Baymar, a young roan, and an old sorrel who had been difficult since the day I bought her and remained difficult with no sign of improvement. The sorrel bit at strangers and kicked at anything that moved in her peripheral vision and had cost me 2 good hands over the years, who had decided a $30 a month job was not worth the dental risk. Cal worked the sorrel in September without complaining and without any particular drama, and by the 3rd week she was difficult only half as often, which for that horse was a considerable improvement. He had done it with patience rather than force, which the horse responded to and which I noted. I was running out of reasons at a steady rate and replacing them with observations, and the observations were going the wrong direction for the no. I had ready. September is when I started watching Ellie, not watching for the thing I was afraid of. I had been watching for that since July, and there was nothing to see, nothing inappropriate, nothing that would have given me grounds. What I started seeing in September was something quieter. The coffee. Ellie brought coffee out to the men most mornings when they were working close to the house. That was her way, had been since she was old enough to carry a pot without burning herself. She brought it to all of them. That was important. She did not single anyone out. She was too careful for that. But the timing of it changed in September. When Cal was working the near fence, she went earlier. Not by much. Not enough that you could point to it and say anything. But I had watched this land and its weather for 30 years, and I had watched my daughter for 23, and I saw what I saw. I also saw that she wasn't doing anything about it. She wasn't lingering, wasn't finding reasons to be near the fence. She brought the coffee, spoke to the men about whatever needed speaking about, and went back to the house. There was nothing in it that a reasonable person could name. That was what made it harder to put down. A girl performing a feeling is easy to read. A woman who has decided she has no right to one is something else. I sat with that for a week without letting myself think it through properly. Because thinking it through properly was going to cost me the no. And I had built the no carefully, and it had served me. Then came October. A Tuesday morning. Ellie had gone to the root cellar for potatoes. We were putting up the fall stores, and the root cellar had been full since the previous week, and the potatoes were for the noon meal. The cellar steps are stone and uneven, carved into the hillside back when I built the place. And a full bucket of October potatoes is heavier than a person who hasn't lifted one recently would expect. She had managed those steps alone every fall since she was 17. I had watched her do it every fall for 6 years and had not once carried the bucket for her, because she had never asked and I had not offered, which is a fact about me I am not going to excuse. She came up the steps with both hands on the bucket, leaning back slightly against the weight. The way you lean when you've been doing something alone for long enough that your body has worked out the geometry of it. Cal was at the near fence, not 20 feet away. He saw her come up. He did not say anything. He did not make a moment of it. He set his wire cutters on the fence post, walked across, and took the bucket out of her hands. No ceremony. No performance. No glance around to see who was watching, which was the thing I noticed most. He did not check whether I was at the window. He had no idea I was at the window. He just walked over and took the weight from her. The way you take a weight from someone you have quietly decided should not be carrying it alone. Then he carried it to the kitchen door, set it down, and went back to the fence. He did not look back. Ellie stood at the kitchen door for a moment. Then she went inside. I could not see her face. I was watching him. He had picked up the wire cutters and gone back to work. Same pace as before. Same quality. As if he had simply done an obvious thing and returned to what he was doing, because for him, I believe, that was exactly what had happened. I stood at the window for a long time. I thought about my father-in-law, Aniz's father, a man named George Pell, who had sized me up at 26 when I had a rented plot and a borrowed horse and wages that barely covered a winter. He had looked at me for a long time and said yes. I had spent 30 years trying to understand what he'd seen. Understood it at that window. He had seen a man who would walk 20 feet and pick up the weight without being asked and without checking whether anyone was watching. That was the whole of it. The plot and the horse and the wages were arithmetic, real arithmetic. I am not saying it doesn't matter. I am saying it was not the thing George Pell had been measuring. I had measured the wrong thing for 3 months. That evening, I sat on the porch after supper and let myself think about the no I had ready, and whether the no had ever been about Cal or whether it had been about something else, about Agnes and the winter of 1878 and the particular fear a father carries after he has already lost one person and cannot quite bring himself to risk another. The fear that says, if I keep Ellie close and keep the world at arm's length, then the world can't take anything more. That fear is not rational. I knew it was not rational even while I was feeling it. But fear of loss after loss doesn't ask to be rational. It asks to be managed, and the way I had been managing it was by being a man with reasons. What I had not let myself think about, not fully, was what the management was costing. Every time I found a reason to keep a man at a distance from Ellie, I told myself I was protecting her. I had not asked her what she thought she needed protecting from. I had not asked her whether she felt protected or whether she felt held. Those are different things, and I had known the difference once, when Agnes was alive and the house had someone else in it who could tell me when I was confusing them. Ellie had never said a word of complaint. That was both the thing I was most proud of in her and the thing I had been most dishonest about in myself, because her silence had let me believe she agreed with me. But Ellie's silence was not agreement. I had raised her in a house where silence was how you manage things too large for words, and she had learned it the way children learn the things you model for them rather than teach. And she had been managing something large in silence for a considerable amount of time. I sat on the porch until the stars came out over the Bighorn Range. The first snow was on the high peaks. The creek ran dark in the last of the light. This land I had built for 30 years for Agnes, for Ellie, for a future I had not entirely defined. The future did not stop because I was afraid of it. That was the thing Agnes had always understood better than I had. The future kept coming whether you faced it or turned your back, and turning your back only meant it found you without your eyes open. Ellie laughed at something inside the house. I heard it through the window, the real one, not the polite one she used for company. The laugh that arrived before she decided about it. I went back inside. The next morning I told Cal I wanted to speak with him after supper. He nodded and went to his work without asking what it was about, which told me he already knew. He came to the porch that evening with his hat in his hands. The hat was worn at the brim from a long season. He held it the way men hold things when they want to show you they are not hiding anything. And he looked at me steadily, and he waited. "You want to speak about Ellie?" I said. "Yes." "Sir, tell me what you're planning to say." He was quiet for a moment, organizing it, not stalling. Then he said, "I know what I have, and what I don't. I'm not going to pretend the don't is small. I have wages and a good set of tools and a plan that has real numbers in it. I can tell you those numbers if you want them. What I can also tell you is that I have been showing up and keeping showing up since I was 17 years old. And I don't know how to be another kind of man than that." I looked at the fence line. Straight posts, tight wire, the work of 3 months. "What's the plan?" I said. He told me. It was not large, not yet. But it was real in the way that plans with specific numbers and specific years are real. The kind of plan that accounts for drought and accounts for bad prices and accounts for the fact that building something takes longer than you expect. He had thought about it the way I had once thought about this land when it was 2 rooms, and a promise. When he finished, I said, "Lally's mother died 5 years ago. She has run this house alone since she was 17, and she has done it without complaint and without asking for anything back. Whatever man she chooses is going to have to understand what that cost her and what she deserves." "I understand it," he said. "You think you do," I said. "You'll understand it better in 10 years. He nodded once. "That's probably true." I sat with that for a moment. An honest answer, not a proud one. "She needs a good man," I said. "Not a rich one." I have seen enough rich men to know the difference. I looked at him. "The question I have been asking myself about you is not the arithmetic. The arithmetic I can see. The question is the other thing." He waited. "The bucket," I said. He looked at me. "Tuesday morning. Root cellar." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "She was carrying something heavy." I know she was. I didn't think about it. I know you didn't. I looked at the fence line. That's the answer to the question. I told him to go talk to her. He put his hat on. He went inside. I sat on the porch alone and listened to the Wyoming night settle around the ranch. And after a while I heard Ellie's voice. Low and careful, and then Cal's, and then a longer quiet. And then Ellie again, and the quality of that particular quiet was different from every other quiet I had heard in this house in 5 years. It was not the quiet of absence. It was the quiet of two people in the same room who have found their footing and don't need to fill the space between them with noise. I had not heard that kind of quiet in this house since Agnes. I sat on the porch and looked at the fence line. Straight posts, tight wire, the whole perimeter of this land I had built from 2 rooms and a promise. 30 years of mornings and hard winters and cattle prices and the particular stubbornness required to stay when staying was harder than leaving. I had built it for something. For Agnes first, and then for what Agnes and I were going to do with it together. And then, after the winter of 1878, for Ellie. Because Ellie was what I had left, and this land was what I could give her. But you cannot give a person land in place of a life. I had understood this in theory for a long time, and in practice only that evening on the porch. Agnes would have said, "I took too long." She would have been right. She usually was, in the things that mattered, and she had been right about me at 26 when her own father had had no particular reason to say yes, and she had told him to say it anyway. I understood now what kind of faith that had taken. I understood it in the particular way you understand a thing when you are standing on the other side of it, 30 years downstream, looking back at the bank where everything started. The porch was cold. The bighorn peaks were black shapes against the stars. From inside the house, through the window, came the low sound of the kitchen being put right for the night. 2 sets of footsteps. 2 people moving through the same space without collision, which is its own kind of language, and one I had not heard in a long time. Put on my hat and went inside and told them both good night. And I did not make a thing of it, and neither did they. Some things you have to watch for a long time before you see them right. Some things require a full season of looking before the shape of them is clear. Some things require a man in worn-out boots carrying a bucket of potatoes to a kitchen door. Without looking back, that was the whole thing. That was all it took.